What if the moon shattered and its fragments rained down upon your struggling colony? That's the premise behind Shattered Hope, one of the most controversial DLCs for Surviving the Aftermath. Released on November 3rd of 2022 on Steam, the Shattered Hope DLC for Surviving the Aftermath is one of the most controversial DLCs for this game. At the time of editing this video, it currently holds a 17% positive rating on Steam with only 29 user reviews. I want to say first and foremost that this DLC is probably one of the most frustrating DLCs on a surface level. If I had to give a most frustrating DLC title, it would probably be Rebirth with its constant monster attacks, but that's another video entirely. With that being said, it does have redeeming qualities to it, but at the same time, it adds some decent difficulty mechanics to it. The thing that is overshadowed the most by its drawbacks, though, are the huge boons that come with this DLC. Breaking down this DLC, Shattered Hope, for the most part, is limited in what it actually adds. It has three main components. 1, the building boost mechanic, 2, the hope mechanic, and 3, the anguish mechanic. Let's go ahead and review each one and give you advice on how to come out on top, as well as getting the most out of each of those hidden boons. Starting off with the building boost mechanic, the moon is literally broken. Like, something happened to the moon, and now it's falling into what we assume to be the Earth. And so these lunar fragments are bombarding your colony map, but they don't actually damage your buildings or people, similar to how meteors do. They will fall on the ground and they'll look like this. You can see they're called moon rocks. And moon rocks can actually be scavenged by moon rock scavengers. And you can find that under the resources tab and build the moon rock scavenger. It is a bit pricey, as you can see, 70 wood and 125 plastic, but it is well worth it. And you can see here, for every 8 moon rocks you gather, you'll get 3 lunar dust. And if you hover over any production building, such as a field hospital or even an environmental station or an electronics factory, you can go over here to this icon right here, and it will overtime the building. And you can see here, it gives a work speed of 1.5 times. So if we click it, now we are overtimed for 48 hours. It's a pretty good deal. And you can also track how much lunar dust you have here. The regular moon rock scavenging building has only 1 worker slot, and it takes 8 rocks to make 3 lunar dust. However, if you upgrade that to a moon rock furnace, every 8 rocks gives you 4 lunar dust and you get 2 worker slots. So is it worth upgrading the moon rock furnace? In short, yes, if you have the resources. 33% boost might not sound huge, but it adds up over time. And I recommend only building 1 moonrock scavenger or furnace for the whole map, because they end up scavenging these items pretty quickly and sometimes sit idle for quite some time. The overtime mechanic is one of the best things that was added into this game. It allows you to speed up a lot of critical production buildings without making your colony overpowered by boosting everything, but rather the important or critical resources that you need at this moment. So for example like this, we can use the electronics factory and overtime it, and now they're going to produce more components more quickly. And don't sit on too much lunar dust either. The lunar dust can actually be traded and sold on the market, and it's about 6 silver for 1 lunar dust. It's a pretty good trade. Selling your excess lunar dust allows you to get some pretty easy funds to buy those extra items that you might need, or if you're lacking the funds for an additional specialist. However, I suggest keeping at least 100 on hand, as bandits can show up at your front gate and ask for lunar dust as ransom. Sometimes it's better just to pay the lunar dust cost as opposed to paying the resources to repair your gate or even your colony. Now let's discuss the hope mechanic. There's now a hope bar in the top left corner of your screen that goes up or down depending on what you do in your colony. Did someone die? Your colonists might lose hope. Or perhaps you took in a new group of people that will raise hope. There are a ton of interactions with hope, and it's too much to list out, but you get the idea. It gives a layer of immersion to the game, making your choices matter that much more, rather than just gaining some supplies or people. You have to maintain hope and possibly make different choices than what you might have done before in order to balance your metrics out. As you can see here, the daily effect is overall happiness is high, so we have a minor increase of hope every day. But the inverse happens. If your happiness and comfort is low, then you'll actually get negative hope being added into your colony. Something to keep in mind is that since hope, happiness, and comfort are tied together, it can actually become a very vicious cycle to get out of if your hope and happiness are low. It becomes very hard to get out of because it also makes your people anguished, and that's a separate mechanic that we'll be talking about later. While it's easier to maintain happiness and comfort, hope can only be increased by a few ways. mainly by doing what people agree with, as well as feasts from the new Colony Square building that you can get. You can actually find the Colony Square building under the happiness section in your building section, and you can actually also see that there is the Shattered Hope icon right here. The price to build this item is pretty high, so do keep that in mind. If you're running low on hope, you can do one of two feasts. You can do a small feast or a large feast. However, the large feast is only unlockable once you have the Hope Square building as opposed to just the regular Colony Square. Looking at each one, you can see what each one provides. There's a major increase of hope plus 20 entertainment for a day, but it takes 762 food, which is scaling based on how much population you have, and the amount of firewood and plastic stays the same. For a large feast, it provides a colossal increase, plus 50 entertainment that lasts for 2 days. Again, the meals scale with your population, but the amount of firewood and fuel remains the same with 125 respectively. So if we go ahead and start a small feast, we could see that it pushes up our hope all the way to the highest. And we also have a nice little boon now that because our people are so hopeful, colonists cannot become anguished. I typically only use feasts when hope is low. Keep in mind that on higher difficulties, this will save you from falling into a hope pit where you can't get out due to the negative feedback loop that you get stuck in with hope and low happiness. Let's talk about the anguish mechanic now. If your hope is too low for too long, your colonists can become anguished. And if they're anguished for too long, they can actually end up turning hostile and attacking your colony. So if you think about that cycle for a second, it can actually be very hard to get out of that because you start losing population due to them turning hostile. Combine that with the recent death debuff and happiness and comfort going to drop quickly too because of that. You can see how this is going to become a very vicious cycle. Whatever you can do, make sure to avoid dropping too low on hope because it's extremely hard to get out of because your colony will spiral out of control, literally. However, the game does provide a new building called the Trauma Center, which is basically just a therapy place for people to work out their anguish state. It has only one worker slot and it has 2 patient slots. Do keep in mind that the Trauma Center does work very slowly. If you find yourself with more than 2 anguish colonists, I recommend building more Trauma Centers. You can find Trauma Center under the Health part of your building menu, and do keep in mind that it does have a pretty decently high building requirement with 100 wood and 150 plastic. And as you can see from the description, recovering from anguish takes time, but the process can be hastened with the use of anti-stress medication, which actually segues us into the next point. The mushroom farm can be found under the health part of your building menu, and it does have a pretty high building cost as well. A lot of these buildings that were added in this DLC have a very high building cost compared to most regular buildings that were just put in the game from the base game. Keep in mind, it does take 5 water units in order to run this build. Inside this building, you have 3 choices of mushroom. The first one is the Serenity Mushroom, which is a medical mushroom, and this is used to produce anti-stress. Next, you have the common mushroom, which is literally just a meat substitute when cooking meals. I recommend not using this one because venison and fish is pretty easy to come across. And lastly, you have the mutant fungi, which is used to produce antibody medication against mutations. Keep in mind that these mushrooms can't be used just by themselves. You have to use these mushrooms in conjunction with another ingredient inside the med hut. The med hut is also found under the health section in your building menu. This is what the med hut looks like, and you can actually select 3 things. The first item on the list is anti-stress medication. It uses 20 medical mushrooms and 2 lunar dust to create 1 anti-stress. This anti-stress medication can be used at the trauma centers to help speed up the process of recovering from the anguish state. Up next, you have the antibody medication, which uses 25 mutant fungi along with 5 herbal medicine. This medication is fantastic because it actually helps people recover from the advanced stage of irradiation, which is mutation. If you find yourself lacking in iodine pills, this medication will help cover the advanced form of radiation sickness. And lastly, we can actually have herbal medicine created at a med hut. I want to emphasize how important this one is because in order to even create herbal medicine just in the base game, you would need to use a whole medical lab. You can see here that a medical lab is required to even produce herbal medicine from the base game. So not only do you need to dedicate a medical lab to completely making herbal medicine, you also have to dedicate a medical lab to building medicine, iodine pills, and antibiotics. With a med hut, you can actually take out the cost of one medical lab and having to man that medical lab with 3 people. This is a very big boon because if you look at how much a medical lab actually costs, 85 plastic, 90 metal, 150 concrete, and 45 electronics. That is a lot of materials, especially those electronics, because those are late game items. And on top of that, if you look over here, the med hut doesn't even require energy compared to the medical lab that takes 12 energy. It's a win-win for you. My recommendation is to set up 3 medical huts, 1 for each item, the anti-stress, the antibody, as well as the herbal medication. My recommendation here is only making 2 mushroom farms. You can obviously scale this up more if you want, but I think you only need 2. 1 for the Serenity mushroom and 1 for the mutant fungi. If you really want to make a common mushroom farm, you can, but I don't think it's necessary given how easy venison and fish are to get. Lastly, there is a storyline attached to this DLC, believe it or not. I don't want to go too deep into the story without spoiling it, but the Bloodboon family, they seem to be wanting to collect a bunch of lunar dust for themselves. You'll have to play to find out and to see what they're doing and see if you can tackle the problems that come with it. Well, that's it for this video. The DLC is small, all things considered. I'll be diving deeper into surviving the aftermath, so hit that subscribe button if you want to stay ahead of the wasteland. If you enjoyed this video, I'd greatly appreciate a like, and as always, I'll see you next time, and have a good one.